Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are taking on a substance that's really captured attention lately. It's moved from ancient rituals right to the cutting edge of psychiatric medicine, psilocybin. You probably know it as magic mushrooms.
It's quite the journey, isn't it? We're talking about something people might have used thousands of years ago. There's rock art suggesting maybe 6,000, even 9,000 BCE. The Aztecs called it Technonacl, the divine mushroom.
Sacred, yeah. And now that ancient connection is sort of fueling this huge modern push in mental health research.
Absolutely. A real potential revolution.
So our mission for you today is to, cut through some of the hype and really synthesize what's going on. We want to unpack three main things.
Okay.
First, what's psilocybin actually doing in the brain to cause these lasting changes people report? Second, why are the immediate effects on thinking, on cognition, kind of inconsistent?
That's a key point.
And third, how are these clinical successes, which seem pretty dramatic, running up against this really complex, almost contradictory legal situation?
Yeah, and that legal tension is impossible to ignore. You've got psilocybin still listed as Schedule I federally. That means, officially, high abuse potential, no accepted medical use.
Right, the highest level of restriction.
But then you have states like Oregon and Colorado basically saying, well, we're moving ahead with regulated therapeutic access anyway.
Yeah.
The science is really pulling the policy along quite rapidly.
Okay, let's start with the science then. Let's look under the hood. How does this, fungus end up acting like a psychological reset button? Let's get into the brain mechanisms.
Right. So the chemistry is pretty neat. When you ingest psilocybin, the actual molecule itself, which has a very long chemical name, we can skip your body, mainly in the gut, quickly converts it into psilocin.
Ah, so psilocin is the active player here.
Exactly. It's psilocin that slips easily across the blood-brain barrier and gets to work.
And once it's in the brain, what's its main target?
Its main job is activating specific serotonin receptors, the 5-HT2A type. These are really dense in the cortex, the parts of the brain doing higher-level thinking, consciousness.
But it's doing more than just causing the psychedelic effects, right? You mentioned physical changes.
Yes, absolutely. Activating these receptors seems to actively promote neuroplasticity.
Neuroplasticity. So the brain is literally rewiring itself, making new connections.
That's the idea. Animal studies showed something pretty remarkable. A single dose led to about a 10% increase in the size and density of dendritic spines. These are the tiny bits that help neurons connect.
Wow. And that lasted.
Yeah, it persisted for up to a month in those studies. This physical building of new connections or strengthening existing ones is likely what underpins the long-lasting therapeutic benefits we're seeing in people.
Okay, and this mechanism seems directly tied to our subjective experience, particularly the sense of self. There's this thing called the default mode network, the DMN.
Right, the DMN. Think of it as the brain's baseline operational network. It's busy when you're mind-wandering, thinking about yourself, your past, your future. It kind of generates your stable sense of me.
Your internal monologue, maybe?
Sort of, yeah. And what psilocybin does, acutely, is desynchronize activity across large parts of the cortex, but it hits the DMN particularly hard. It disrupts that network significantly.
So that feeling people describe, sometimes called ego death, or the self-dissolving, that's the DMN quieting down.
That seems to be the direct neurological effect, yes. And crucially, the effects aren't just temporary. Research shows a lasting decrease in the functional connection between parts of the hippocampus and the DMN, weeks after just one high dose.
And that lasting change, that dampening of the self-network, might be why anxiety and depression symptoms stay lower.
That's a leading hypothesis. It's like it loosens the grip of that often rigid, self-critical loop that's really prominent in depression and anxiety. Some research even points to specific neurons, pyramidal tract neurons in the frontal cortex, and their 5-HT2A receptors being essential for the positive behavioral effects.
This understanding, being able to pinpoint the physical changes, is driving a lot of drug development interest, isn't it? Trying to get the benefits without the intense psychedelic experience.
Exactly. The hunt is on for what they call non-hallucinogenic derivatives, molecules that trigger the neuroplasticity, that reset, but without the profound, sometimes challenging, altered state of consciousness. The hope is maybe fewer side effects, easier clinical use.
But hang on, that raises a huge question, doesn't it? If things like the ego death experience and that DMN disruption feel so central to the deep healing people report, especially for things like existential distress, can you actually separate the plasticity from the conscious experience and get the same result?
That is the multi-million-dollar question right now. Can you have the therapeutic dive without the deep dive experience?
Yeah.
And the answer might be It depends. For some conditions, especially like the cancer-related anxiety studies we'll talk about, the data strongly suggest that the intensity and meaning of the subjective experience itself is crucial for the therapeutic outcome.
So stripping away the trip might strip away the long-term psychological benefit.
It's a real possibility, a high-stakes trade-off they're exploring.
Okay, huge point. Let's pivot now. If it's rewiring the brain like that, you might think, okay, people must get instantly sharper, smarter. But when we look at cognitive function, the immediate effects, well, they're messy.
They are definitely mixed. There was a big systematic review, looked at 20 studies, almost 3,000 people, mostly healthy volunteers, getting decent doses.
Okay.
And it found that things like overall cognitive function, basic processing speed, measured with standard tests like the MMSE or CANTAP reaction time test, mostly stayed the same in healthy folks. It's not like a magic smart drug.
Right, not a general cognitive enhancer in that sense.
But, and this is crucial, the picture really changes when you look at patient groups, especially those with treatment-resistant depression or TRD.
Ah, so it's different for people already experiencing cognitive issues due to their illness.
Precisely. In those groups, studies did report improvements. Things like sustained attention, working memory, executive functions planning, organizing, they got better after psilocybin treatment.
That's significant. What about emotional aspects?
That's also really interesting. It seems to enhance emotional empathy, the ability to feel along with someone else without necessarily changing cognitive empathy, which is more about understanding someone's perspective.
And how does that connect back to depression?
Well, in depressed individuals, this boost in emotional processing capacity seemed to directly combat anhedonia.
Anhedonia, that inability to feel pleasure, right?
Exactly. So the better their emotional processing became, the more their anhedonia lifted. It suggests psilocybin might be helping reactivate the very capacity to connect emotionally with the world, which is often dulled in depression.
What about creativity? That's a common association.
Yeah, the data is a bit nuanced there too. Initially, during the acute effects, things like cognitive flexibility and maybe creative thinking might actually dip slightly.
Oh, interesting. Decline first.
Acutely, yeah.
Yeah.
But there's some suggestion they might improve later on, after the main effects wear off. And for memory, some promise for improving connections between concepts, like semantic associations, but less clear effects on just remembering lists or events.
Okay, let's move into the clinical trials then. This is where psilocybin really seems to shine, especially for major depressive disorder, MDD. You mentioned speed.
The speed is really the headline here. A review of 5 good-quality randomized controlled trials. The gold standard found psilocybin worked better than the comparison groups for depression symptoms in most studies, about 60%.
And anxiety, too.
Yes, it significantly improved anxiety symptoms that often go along with depression in 80% of those studies.
Yeah.
But the speed,
Right, that's the difference maker.
it's a huge departure. Standard antidepressants, as you know, can take weeks, even months, to show effects. Psilocybin often brings significant relief within days of a single guided session.
Days. That's remarkable. And safety in those trials.
Generally well tolerated. People weren't dropping out of the psilocybin groups more than the control groups. The most common side effect reported was just headache, usually mild.
Okay, perhaps the most compelling evidence, you hinted at it earlier, is for that deep existential distress, particularly in cancer patients facing mortality.
Yeah, this research is really foundational. Giving a high dose of psilocybin alongside psychotherapy to patients with life-threatening cancer led to really quick, large, and lasting drops in depression, anxiety, and specifically death anxiety
And the effects lasted.
for at least 6 months in that key study.
Mhm.
And over 80% of the participants said they had increased well-being, more life satisfaction, and they directly attributed it to that psilocybin experience.
And back to that crucial point we discussed for this group, the mystical type experience, that feeling of profound meaning or connection was key.
Absolutely. The analyses showed that the intensity of that subjective, often spiritual breakthrough experience was what mediated the therapeutic benefit. It was the engine driving the lasting change.
Which really pushes back on the idea of non-hallucinogenic versions for this specific kind of suffering, right?
It strongly suggests that for existential crises, that profound shift in consciousness might be inseparable from the healing process itself. The awe, the interconnectedness that seems to be the medicine here.
Fascinating. Okay, beyond mood and existential issues, what about PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder?
There's definitely excitement there, but it's still early days. Animal studies look promising a single dose helped extinguish fear memories faster and promoted that hippocampal neuroplasticity we talked about. It suggests a potential mechanism.
And this is a big but.
A very big but. We have
Yeah.
to be crystal clear. As of now, no clinical trials have actually tested psilocybin-assisted therapy for PTSD in humans. None. The potential is there based on the mechanism, but it's purely preclinical for PTSD at this point.
Good to keep that distinction sharp. Any other frontiers being explored?
Yeah, people are looking beyond the usual suspects. There's actually a trial looking at psilocybin for fibromyalgia, focusing on psychological flexibility and checking brain biomarkers.
Interesting. Moving into chronic pain conditions.
Right. And also, reflecting our times, there's been analysis of online forums where people discuss long COVID. Anecdotally, a significant number, around 78% in one survey of posts, reported feeling improvement in their neuropsychiatric symptoms, brain fog, depression after using psilocybin, and said it lasted beyond the immediate effects. Again, anecdotal, but points towards areas for future research.
Okay, with all this clinical potential bubbling up, we have to land on the practicalities. Section 4, the regulatory reality and, crucially, safety. This isn't something to experiment with casually.
Absolutely not. It needs to be stressed. In every legitimate therapeutic or newly legal setting, psilocybin is given within a structured, supervised program. This always involves preparation sessions beforehand, the dosing session itself under supervision, and really important integration sessions afterwards.
Integration to make sense of it all.
Yes, to help process the experience, make meaning of it, and translate any insights into lasting changes in life. It's not just about the drug. It's about the whole therapeutic container.
And screening participants is vital.
Mandatory. Rigorous screening is essential, primarily to exclude anyone with a personal or close family history of psychotic disorders like schizophrenia or bipolar disorder. There's a known risk, though considered small in controlled settings, that it could precipitate psychosis in vulnerable individuals. Medical oversight is absolutely key.
Okay, let's talk drug interactions. This is critical, especially for people maybe already on medication for depression or anxiety.
Super important information for you listening. If someone is taking SSRIs or SNRIs, common antidepressants, they generally need to be tapered off and stopped for at least 2 weeks before a psilocybin session. For fluoxetine, Prozac, it's even longer, maybe 6 weeks.
Why is that?
Because those medications work on the serotonin system too. And they can actually downregulate or blunt the sensitivity of the very 5-HT2A receptors that psilocybin needs to bind to for its main effects. Taking them together might just make the psilocybin experience much weaker, potentially ineffective.
Okay, so it blunts the effect. And is there one interaction that's particularly dangerous?
Yes, there is. The pain medication tramadol. Combining tramadol with psilocybin is considered very risky because both substances can lower the seizure threshold. Taking them together significantly increases that risk. That's a definite one to avoid.
Good to know. All right, finally, let's just touch on that legal maze again. Science moving fast, law lagging behind.
That's the picture. Federally, Schedule 1, technically illegal with no medical use, but states are pushing the boundaries. Oregon has legalized it for therapy, initially focused on terminal illness but broadening. Colorado has also legalized supervised use.
And cities, too.
Yeah, you're seeing local decriminalization efforts. Cities like Olympia and Tacoma in Washington, among others, have basically said prosecuting possession of natural psychedelics, plant-based ones, is their lowest law enforcement priority. It's a real patchwork.
Okay, so let's try to synthesize all of this. We've covered the brain changes, the neuroplasticity, the clinical wins, especially in depression and end-of-life distress, the mixed cognitive picture, the safety needs, the legal complexities. What's the core takeaway we want you, our listener, to hold on to?
I think the central idea is that psilocybin's real therapeutic promise seems to come from its ability to trigger rapid neuroplastic changes and sort of shake up the brain's core networks, especially the one tied to our sense of self. It offers quick, often profound relief, particularly when that sense of self has become rigid and is causing suffering.
Right. And that leads us directly to our final provocative thought for you to maybe mull over.
Yeah.
Given that the main immediate effect seems to be disrupting, even temporarily dissolving, the default mode network, the neurological basis of your stable self-identity, what does it really imply about healing, about mental health, if achieving lasting relief from deep suffering might actually require, or at least be significantly helped by, the intentional, temporary letting go of who you fundamentally think you are?